Welcome back. Today is a day for course creation. If you're the best kept secret, if you're one of those people who create courses and no one goes through them, this is for you. I can't remember what the stats are, but the rate of course completion is terrible. And some of us believe that courses may even be dead. Today we're here to challenge that. Courses are not dead. Maybe the way you're creating them is dead. I am personally someone who goes through courses 100%, but some courses I have bought and I never went past like the first episode or the past module. In fact, the best course I've ever bought, I think, was under 1 hour, and it was $1,000. And that was the best course I ever bought. It was short, it was to the point, it was so specific. After watching it, I knew exactly how to do the thing that I was trying to do. And so I have always challenged how much content needs to be in a course. I have already challenged why people need modules and modules and modules of courses. In fact, I resorted to what's the shortest course I can produce that gets people to do the work. What is my goal and how can I make this as short as possible? But today we have Catrina, and Catrina has spent a fair share of her life understanding user interfaces, understanding how to make people go through courses, understanding how to offer transformation through courses. Now, I wanted to bring her on because otherwise, best kept secret, we really believe that the best way to change lives, to change the world, is to get people to go through what you have to offer, to get people to experience your work. And also courses is really one way to scale yourself, one way to scale up whatever you're trying to do. Most of the work we do is one-on-one work, and that can be challenged. It can be expanded, as in we can increase prices and we can do certain things to help people, but ultimately that's limited. And so I love courses to a certain extent because they allow us to scale ourselves without dilution. I, for one, I'm not one for you come in and then you have my 100 coaches. Like, it's not my model, because I don't like the dilution that goes on in the middle between me and then whoever I've trained. And so that 8-figure model for me challenges me, because I don't want the dilution that goes on when I have 100 coaches trying to teach what I'm teaching. And so I love any way I can directly give the thing to the person who needs it. And courses is, for me, as close as it gets of this. But how can we get people to consume the course? How can we get people to transform their life? How can we get people to talk about our work? How can we force transformation through courses? Because people buy courses, people go through courses. But if your course is just a course, no one will go through it. So how can we make courses shine again? I am not the person who is going to talk about this. I wouldn't be qualified. But Catrina is very qualified. She studied this, she breathes this, she lives this. So let's not waste more time. Catrina, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
As I was going round and round and round, what did I miss that is so crucial to the work you do, actually?
I think you nailed it. I think every reason that you gave is exactly why it matters how we design our courses. I think the only other thing I would add on top of that is that people are buying courses because they want to learn from you, and they want to learn from you because they want to make a change. And remembering that as you're building, right? You're being paid to help somebody make a change. And I think that's a really important, part, a really important why to come back to as you're in the whatever stage of the course creation process.
I like even looking at it like you get paid to create change. And so if people are going through your course, chances are they'll refer somebody. If people never go through the thing, chances are they will not be talking about it because they didn't get results from it. And if no one is talking about your course, then maybe that is why no one is buying it. Or maybe you have negative word of mouth about your course. Someone went through the first module and were like, I can't believe how much time was wasted. And so hopefully by the end of today, we're going to talk about how to think about putting your soul work up like a master, like how to craft, like how to make your soul work a masterpiece that the world can't help but consume it, you know? What does that involve? But before we even get there, Catrina, what is it that we get wrong about course creation? Like, what is the one thing that you need us to flip around and go like, okay, if you understood one thing today, just understand this thing here. What would it be? What do we get wrong about helping people through courses?
I think the number one mistake made in course creation is focusing on what content am I going to give first. Right. And so like thinking back to the best course you ever bought, you got something concrete, right? There was a specific goal attached to you completing that course. And when we focus on the tasks first, so taking that goal that they're coming to us with and breaking it down, and then giving them the content that helps them complete the task instead of everything we know, right? So if you're selling courses and you're doing one-on-one, you know so much. Don't try to give them an entire like certificate or an entire degree all in one course. And I think that's when we start to get into those courses that are module after module after module, and it's tough to slog through all that information when we don't know, one, if we need all that information or what information is going to help us do the thing. And so I always recommend starting with what's the goal, what are the steps, what are the tasks, and then map what information they need onto it. And sometimes that might mean, there might be a step or a task that you have to consider what their experience with that is. So like in an example I like to use is calligraphy. In a calligraphy class, if they're in the beginner stage, you don't want to start giving them intermediate elements, right? But if they're in the intermediate, you don't know what their beginner steps were. So it's okay to say, if you didn't learn X, here's some information to go learn more about X. And that's sort of how you manage the level that they're coming to you with. That's how you manage not giving them too much information. And those are things that lead to learners succeeding in the course and actually getting to that change they're looking for.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying, the first question is, what do they need to do? They need to do this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. Okay. Yep. If that's what they need to do, maybe what are the pillars around this thing here? There needs to be a pillar that gets them to do that thing, a pillar that gets them to do that thing, a pillar that gets them to do that thing, a pillar. Then now, what is the information that they need to get this pillar so that they can do that thing? Okay, walk me through that. Like, even before walking me through that, like, let's just get your story. How did you get here?
It was meandering. I got here meandering. So I really think it goes back to, it might even go back to undergrad. So I was a reader for a blind professor in the sociology department. And so this was ages ago. So I did things like recorded textbooks to cassette tapes. I read student papers out loud. And my degree was in English. And so I did a lot of the, feedback on writing. And then I got my master's degree on professional technical writing, and I fell in love with teaching writing. My spouse is in the Coast Guard, and so that meant a lot of moving for me. And so I shifted into teaching writing online. And it was my favorite. I did it because I wanted to break down gates for people that had been told they were terrible writers, or the red pen had been used so much on their writing. And when I decided to leave higher ed after 15 years, that was the thing that I brought with me. In all that time, I had learned how to design online courses, how to specifically do it for adults, for busy adults, like adulting adults. And the purpose that I carried with me from higher ed into the online the course creation world was the desire to break down gates. And so a lot of times I will tell people that I actually help your client because I want them to have a good experience. And that in turn helps you. Because I really think it's about creating access to change when you design good courses.
I really like that. Tell me more about the access. Tell me about the user experience. Tell me about all those things that you're very keen about when you talk about course creation and access and user interface. And I'm like, really? Like, what are those? Why do they even matter? I was reading your work and I'm like, access, user interface. What is she talking about? Enlighten some of us who have no idea.
So access, I talk about access in two different ways. One, there's like legal accessibility, things that you need to have in a course, right? So in the US, I think it's like 27 or 28% of the population has a disability. And some of those disabilities are cognitive, some are visual, some are auditory. And so your things need to have captions, they need to have transcripts, they need to be written in plain language. They need to be accessible for people with disabilities. But I also like to talk about accessibility in terms of making it accessible for a variety of experiences. So understanding that different people are going to come to your course with different experiences with learning, with different expectations, and those expectations matter. Because if the course is different from what we expect, so if we come in expecting to get a change and we don't get a change, then one, we're not going to finish the course, right? I can't tell you how many times I haven't finished a course because I got in there and it was just a content dump. There was no like, well, how should I use this content to get the thing that I want to get? And so those are the two different ways that I like to talk about access, because they're really important to completion, right? When we're, even as adults, emotions drive learning. So if we're having a negative emotion when we're trying to experience a course, that can impact continuing on through the course.
This is interesting. A person like me, I am a very, very, very simple creator. And so when I create a course, I'm thinking, what is the simplest way with the least words I can use to take this person from A to B? And I go, this is the point I want you to understand. This is a little story to help you see it. This is a little framework of how I want you to think about that. This is what I want you to go and do. And this is a worksheet. That's all. I am not going to put cartoons. I'm not going to put visuals. I'm not going to put animations. Like, that's not kind of my way I do it. And so now I'm wondering if I'm missing out on the legal way of doing it and everything in between. Like, what's the fine line between what I can comprehend as a teacher versus the entire universe? Because I don't know, there's some people who have just never learned from Prima because she's just Prima.
So I mean, I don't think that having a whole bunch of cartoons and stuff in your content, I don't think that's useful. That's not how we keep attention. We keep attention by breaking things down. So instead of a 30-minute video, you've got 6 5-minute videos. I think I did that math right. So it sounds like your question is how do we make accessibility accessible to the person creating the course, right? Because it's a rabbit hole.
How do I as a creator get comfortable diversifying without losing my own? That's some things like I wouldn't be willing to do. So how do I create and serve without losing my own, without stepping out of my own genius in which I can serve the best people? Because if I try to serve 100 types of people, chances are I won't serve nobody, because now I'm really trying to act and be something else. So I just wanted to explain that part, because I'm like, I wonder if I want to change so much about like how I'm able to deliver. Yeah.
Well, it's impossible to design for
Mm.
everybody. I'm going to
Mm.
start with that. And so to
Mm.
me, the first step is always making it accessible for folks with disabilities. So captioning
Mm.
videos,
Mm.
but don't rely on auto captions, because those are, even with AI the way it is right now, it still makes mistakes. Pulling the transcript, even if you caption the video, also pulling the transcript and making sure that that transcript has descriptions of important visuals in the video. That
Mm.
helps somebody that has vision problems, because they can have, or auditory problems, vision problems, so that they can have a screen reader read the transcript.
Mm.
Pulling the audio apart. So really it's just taking the content and almost repurposing it in different ways that you can access it. That would be the first. And if that's the only step, then that's a good step, because it still makes it
Mm.
accessible to more people.
Mm.
In terms of other things, you know your target audience and who is coming to you for courses better than anybody else. And
Mm.
so knowing who they are, like how much time do they have in a week? How many
Mm.
courses have they taken? How many times have they tried to make this change? Those are things that can help you get started in making it accessible. And then you
Mm.
ask, right? Like part of this is remembering that there's real people on the other end. And so you just do a few steps to make it as
Mm.
accessible as possible. You run it and then you get feedback. Like, was
Mm.
there a part that you had difficulty completing? Was there a space where the instructions weren't clear? Was there a step where this document just wasn't useful? Asking the right questions and targeted questions can get you a
Mm.
long way in figuring out where to focus your accessibility efforts next.
So if we're thinking 0 to 10 of thinking the thought process when I am to create a course, when I leave this interview, would you like to go there? What should I think about the next time I go, okay, I'm going to craft a course. I'm mapping out. Like I like to go on the board, map out, go, okay, pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3. Okay, this is the story I want to tell. This is the story I want to tell. This is the story I want to tell. This is the framework for this. This is the framework for this. Bam, bam, bam. This is really what I want them to do. This is the changing behavior that I want for this. This is the changing behavior I want for this. This is how I want them to do. This is the homework. This is the worksheet. This is the thing. These are the questions I want them to think about. That's kind of how I'm mapping when I'm personally creating courses. What would you say is, how should we start to think as we're mapping out? How can I personally improve how I'm mapping out? Because every time I create a course, I like to force people through it by offering some kind of support.
Mm-hmm.
But from what you're saying, if you do the right things, people are able to lead themselves. I don't know if I've done that well. I always force people through the course with a little bit of coaching. So I'll create like a coaching angle, and then whether it's once a month or whatever, I would try and force the content in, maybe use 10 minutes to force a pillar in, and then another 10 minutes like that. So kind of give me that A to Z. Let me see where I can do things better, because I've personally forced people through the courses like that.
And that's okay. I mean, the approach that I take can work for any area of the spectrum. So if you do more live and cohort based courses, then accessibility matters. It just looks a little different. If you do self-paced courses, accessibility matters. It just looks a little different. I actually really like that you offer the support, because I think that's a critical piece of access, especially depending upon what you're teaching, right? Some things are okay to just give it step by step, especially like things that are more skills based, right? Those tend to lean more toward being able to go through it yourself. So for you, in having something that's like some live coaching where you're like, things are more laid out, I would start with the pieces that you are using that are, I don't want to say evergreen because they hate that word, but they're more permanent, right? So if you have the worksheet or whatever it is that you're giving, PDFs can have real accessibility issues because they're often, depending on where you download them from, but most of the time they should have a tag with a reading order so that somebody that's using a screen reader can go through and have things read to them in the right order. A lot of times when you export a PDF from Canva or from a Word document, the reading order is out of order. And so that would be, checking those for accessibility, checking those for readability. So things like color contrast. There are a bunch of free online tools that you can use to check color contrast. So in your map, like before you get to those nitty-gritty details, I would go through and articulate, okay, so if this is the pillar that I'm giving them, how am I giving them the information? What do I need to make that accessible? So if it's something where you're doing it live, that accessibility piece might be turning on captions in Zoom, or it might be having a slideshow maybe that you don't necessarily go through, but that you give them a link to. Or it might be giving them a document in the chat that has the agenda so people know what's coming, right? So some of that is helping folks that have neurodivergence and or are neurodivergent, because it tells them what's coming next, right? For the visual learners, a slideshow that you don't have to share. I don't share slideshows when I do things, when I do master classes or workshops, but I give them the link so that if they want to follow along because they need that to process the information, then they can. So that's where I would start for you. I would go through the map, and in whatever the content pillars are, articulate how you're giving the information, plan out how you can make it more accessible, and then do that with the tasks as well, because then that's you driving your own accessibility focus.
Interesting. I use Google Docs, so I just drop the link there. I think though that I could use a little bit more, I don't know, more colors, more, like I'm a bit too straight, black and white. This is the point. These are the notes.
Actually, that's better.
I keep it too simple.
That's better, Prima. It really is, because it's good contrast, right? So for folks that have color blindness, contrast is better. And so if it's white background with black text, that's actually going to be the most readable. Just most folks don't do that. Most folks like to make it like brand colors and all of those things, but those kinds of things can make it inaccessible.
Wow. My question is always, how can this thing be simple, easy, doable? How can it be clear? That's how I'm thinking. Is it cute? No, like I would get a 0. I'm not like thinking, is it cute? Is it brand? No, like I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking, can they read it? Can they understand it? Is it clear? Is it simple? Is it actionable? Can I remove fluff? That's how I'm thinking.
Yeah. Oh, I hate fluff.
What else would we need to think about in designing? If I'm on the drawing board, what else? How else do I need to think? From the time I conceive the idea to the time it's in their hand. Like lately, I am very careful not to create. Like I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm not creating. I've even retracted some of my stuff. I'm like, I'm keeping this. And I want to go, what is the best thing right now that if I produced, it would give you my life's work? Like I'm just thinking right now, I need my audience to tell me, if I could produce one thing and give you my life's work, what would that be? Because I have been in a place where I looked at my own votes and went, hold on, this is too much. And I would have people join and let alone go, the information is just too much. I feel I'm too behind. I will cancel. That is because there was a mastermind 12 months and we just kept the recordings in. So someone who joined at month 8, even though that was an evergreen mastermind, felt as though they had missed 8 months.
Right.
And so what I could have done is remove those recordings and keep them in another place, which only you get access to a recording that you're looking for, as opposed to keeping them every week and thinking it's value, because now it turned into overwhelm. And I know I have canceled memberships because of that. I have canceled memberships because that was too much, and I simply just couldn't go through it. It was just overwhelmed. Too much value for me made me cancel. So then how do you keep things to the point at the same time giving value? Because I know, like, the people that I work with, they're trying to serve from their hearts. They're trying to fulfill a calling. They're trying to save lives, and they're trying to immerse themselves and give as much as they can. But they're not thinking about, this is too much. They're thinking about, how else can I give value? What else can I show them? Oh, there is other thing. And then they finish their course and they go, no, they need to know this thing. And they need to know this thing. Yeah. And as they are learning and learning, they keep adding things. How do we keep away from the too much syndrome? That desire to add that other thing because you feel like if people don't know it, they're going to die or whatever. I don't know. But there is something to do with mission-driven messengers that really gets you getting people overwhelmed and calling it either goodwill or value. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And it's a common problem. I mean, I've been and am in groups where that is the thing. That's the case where if you came in, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm like 2 years behind.
That was me.
And so I'm gonna start with, remember, it's not about you. Remembering that it's about the people that you're trying to help and what they need. And so going back and focusing on what are their goals, right? Not what are my goals. What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish by coming to me? And when you start from there and then break those goals down. So I hate SMART goals, but I use SMART goals for setting goals for clients that are coming to me, because I think it's really helpful to have something concrete, especially if you are in sort of a transformation online business where those transformations can be squishy, right? But the thing that you have them do, that can be concrete. And so setting those goals and then taking those goals and, like we said at the beginning, breaking them down into steps. And if the content or the information that you feel you need to give them, if it doesn't fit into them completing that thing, then don't include it. But I will say, if you are in a situation where you have maybe the 8 masterclasses and you have maybe 2 or 3 different courses that you've run at different times, but they're all beneficial, you can use that same method to help people that come to you pick a path. So you can say, all right, this is your goal, if you are coming to me with this goal, you should go watch this, and this. You should go do this, and this will help you reach that goal. I take issue with most course platforms because they're not designed to do that. They're not designed to let you, as the course designer, help people take different paths through the same information and the same tasks, right? They're not designed to help you create a different experience based on someone's goal. So until I find a good developer to help me develop that course platform, the suggestion I often make is for you to come up with the top, I don't know, at least 3 goals that people come to you with. And you could ask your audience, like, what are the goals when you come to me or you sign up with me? And then identify the path that they would need to take. And you can keep it simple. You can just make it a Google Doc where you say, if this is your goal, then you should do this, 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 and this, and make it into a checklist. And that can help folks through the things that you have included. And it makes it easy to change too, right? As your information changes or as you add more or take things out,
So what you're saying is if you can do a lot, like I tend to see the more someone is in the market, the more they have to offer, the more overwhelming the vault gets. And so instead of thinking this is how to do that, think about maybe there are different journeys, different customer journeys, and begin to map out best. I think there's one company that I've worked with that did that very well. They had 4 journeys. This is your journey if you are starting a new business. This is your journey if you want a speaker business. This is your journey if you want an author business. This is your journey if you're a podcaster. This is your journey if you're doing ABC. And as we went in, it was more like your enrollment is going to be hopefully over 10 years because we have everything here. However, we don't want you to do all things at the same time because you will get overwhelmed. You're building a brand. This is a process. It's not a competition. So pick the first path, and through year 1, allow yourself to go through that path. And once that path is done, take your second path. And during year 2, take that path. And so now it became very easy because I knew that my path is here and I'm not missing out by not taking the other things. I'm just getting focused. But incidentally, things kept crossing. But I thought that was really clever because the first experience I had was like, you must be kidding me. This is too much. Like, how can I possibly go through this? There's branding, there's marketing, there's selling, there's scaling, there's ads. I'm like, okay, this might be nice, but it's too much. There's podcasting, there's speaker journey, there's how to be a bestseller. I'm like, what? Hold on. Like, how am I supposed to do all this? Until I saw the customer journey and the CEO kept showing up from point to point saying, before you do anything, I need you to understand that there's a customer journey. Now I understood why she kept saying that. And before any event, they would bring someone on to say, hey, just so we know their customer journeys. But my first week before any event was like overwhelmed. But then when they introduced that, I was like, this is helpful. So I think it's what you're trying to say, like, could you create customer journeys? And could you tell people where to go? Like theirs is a simple table. So they have all these courses and they used to lock them. Now I think they don't. They have all these courses, but then they have a table. Please start here. And it's journey. But somehow when they onboard you, they force you, they indoctrinate you into a path. They even give you a community, like if you are in this path, this is the place to hang out. If you're in this path, this is, so it's I thought they did a very good job. I think the things we're even discussing are very relevant to memberships because that's a membership.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Memberships, I think, run into similar issues where, especially if it's been there a little while, you get in there and there's so much, it can be easy to get lost, right? In the, I should be doing XYZ. And so to me, it's about navigation, a lot of this, right? It's about navigating how I'm going to get what I need out of, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a vast amount of courses, or like, you don't have to have a course for podcasters and a course for authors. You could just have a course for someone who is writing a business plan. You could have a course for someone who is doing branding, right? It can be that, it can be smaller than I'm a podcaster or I'm an author. It can be more goal focused, but still you want to, if they're buying into your membership or program or just getting your whole vault, you want to make sure that it's clear to them how to navigate what you're giving them.
Let's talk more about the blunders. So one is having too much information that is all over the place. Think about maybe customer journeys, because if that group that I'm a part of didn't think about customer journeys, I think their churn would be so high. Because in the first week, my decision was I'm leaving. There is no way I'm paying 13 grand to these people to drown me. Like, my husband was like, are you kidding me? It's so great. There's so many videos. I said, yeah, so many videos for who needs so many videos. I was like, why can't they get each course and just give me one video for the course? And my husband was like, are you kidding me? This is heaven. So for him, he likes like videos. The more videos, the better. The more videos, the better. So maybe they put like that. But for me, I cringe at so much information. So the first mistake is that things equal value. More equals value, and it's not. Think about how can you help people digest, consume, bite on whatever you're giving them? How can you help hold their hand through the content? How can you reduce it? What can you remove? Lately, I believe that removing is even more valuable than adding. So what else? What are like the 3 or 5 top things that if people started to think about, course creation would be more fun, and we would see better rates, like complete rates? And because I think complete rates will somehow end up in upsells, they'll end up in referral business. So give me like 4 to 5 tips or 3 of how I can improve my experience or anyone's experience today who is a course creator and thinking, how can I make this better?
Yeah. I mean, taking out that information, taking out too much information. And if you have, that's the first one. And then the second one is if you have a lot of things you're teaching, right? And so sometimes we need the information because we are teaching a lot of things. Make sure there's a pathway through it. So that's number 2. I would say that the third thing is remembering that content doesn't equal learning. Giving someone information means they have knowledge, but if they're not engaging with it and applying it, then are they really learning it? Can they really go do the thing if all they're doing is watching videos and they're not actually out there using the information that you're giving them? I think that's probably the third tip, is making sure that you're not just focusing on the content, that you're really focusing on how are you having them engage with it and how are you having them apply it. My fourth tip is always going to be accessibility. But I think, we've talked about a lot of different examples so far in accessibility, like captioning, alt texting, all of those things that are about making content accessible, but it's also about making sure information is accessible. So making sure that you're giving the information to the level of person that's coming to you. And then making sure that completion is accessible. So the navigation that we've talked about, that would be one way to make completion accessible. Another one is transparency. So transparency is explaining why you are having them watch this video or listen to this audio or do this thing or write this journal prompt. Why? So when we know why we're being asked to do certain things and how that's going to get us from point A to point B, then we're more likely to do them. From years of teaching freshman writing classes where they're like, this feels like busy work. The way you make things not feel like busy work is explaining the purpose, making sure that the purpose of all of the things is clear.
I like putting a story. Every time I give them something like a point, I like to say, like, for example, when I teach people how to stop being a best-kept secret, the first thing is core message. And I like to tell a story. And of the story, I go, now you see why I really needed my core message. Now you see why I needed to be clear on the message that I was taking to market. Now you see why I messed up. And this is why I want you to understand this part. And so I like stories because stories really inspire people understand what could go wrong or what could go right when they do or don't do that thing. So I like what you're saying, transparency.
Stories are a really good way to explain the why. If you have the stories, and oftentimes learning from others' mistakes is good. So if their story is like, do this because if you don't, sometimes that could be the most impactful, but we don't always have those stories. And so sometimes something as simple as it's going to help you do XYZ.
You can just explain.
That can sometimes yeah, that can sometimes be enough if you don't have a story for it.
So take out whatever you think people need. What could you take out? Oh, how could you create a path through the knowledge that you're very generous with? Understanding that knowledge or content is not transformation. How could you get them to do the thing? How could you get their hands busy? How could they, like I have listened to books, and my best books have been when the writer, or because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, is saying, I want you to pause and I want you to get the PDF that came with this reading or whatever. And I want you to do the work. Because that has always gotten me from just, I don't know, just listening. Like every time I buy a book, this is like creating what your heart needs. I print, this is a book, I have an audible, but this is the worksheet that comes with it. So I've gone through the book once. Now I'm going to go and try and do this. And if I don't understand what I'm doing, I'm going to listen again with now the focus of feeling this. Oh, just lost my internet. Give it a sec. What? So yeah, I was explaining, like for me, every book I buy, if I really like the book, I like to print out the work, and then I like to really go through the work so that I know that I've understood what's in the book. So this is very helpful because it's like fill in the blank. Put the things there that you're learning. Put what you're going to do from this lesson. So it's really helpful. Like I think this is accessibility as well. How you're saying it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
What else? Anything else? Like what could we tangibly, if somebody was going, okay, this is good, but what should I do? Where should I start? What would you think of as in go start doing XYZ? If I have a course now, this is what I need to do. If I am trying to create one, if I already have one that I can't sell, maybe that's one of those reasons is why. Where would you take us? Like,
so if you're just starting, if you were just starting, my first suggestion is to create those goals. The goals aren't for you, the goals that are for your learner, because those are going to be your grounding point for everything that you do, every decision you make is going to come back to those goals. And you can change the goals, right? As you're doing things and as you're talking to people. So it's not just about making goals. It's about finding out if those goals are things people are interested in getting from you, right? And I think that's, no matter where in the process you are, making sure that you're talking to people about what you're doing and what you're planning and what you're thinking is really important. If you're at the other end of the spectrum and you're like, well, I have a course and maybe it sold well the first time, but nobody finished, I didn't get testimonials, and it just feels bleh. Then to me, that means you need to do a backwards look at what's in the course, what are the goals that they're supposed to reach, and then look and see where you may be going astray, or where things might be inaccessible, or where they struggle with navigating what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to go next and what they're supposed to get.
Tell me about selling the thing before you create it. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really is that it comes down to you and what you're comfortable with. But I do also think that you can build, like if you do have a smaller audience and you're afraid that if you build it, they won't come. It's possible to create a course map that is so detailed, it will make you feel better, right? Like if you map everything out and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to need to talk about this, you can write a script that you can either use live or use to record your videos. And then you get that feedback. So regardless of you know, what the plan is, like if you want to build it before you sell it or sell it before you build it, I think that the good in between is the course map that can be as detailed as you need it to be to do whatever it is you choose. I think that if you build out like a 5-week course without getting any feedback, that might create more work for you, even if it's something that you feel more comfortable with. I think you can be a little bit ahead of where they are. So like maybe you create the first week and the first week is already done. And then that means you're a little bit ahead in your planning and building of things. Certain things can be pre-built as long as they're easy to adjust, right? So if you are, have worksheets that you're going to have them use, don't make them PDFs, make them a Google Doc, because you can adjust the Google Doc even with the link already created. You can continue to adapt that. And so those are things that you can build to get started that you can easily change as your beta versions of courses are definitely like, you should do one, regardless of if it's live or self-paced. You should always do a beta version, because people are also more forgiving of building it after you've sold it. When you say, well, this is a beta version, we're playing. It's okay to play in learning, even as adults. And I think people forget that sometimes.
I think that's really important. People are more forgiving than you think if you come up front and tell them that you are going to modify things. I think the best example of this stuff, if you get scared of giving imperfect solutions, follow my work. Like I will tell you, by the way, I'm creating this thing. And right now I have 3 parts of it. And so if you want to come and see me build 4 to 5, join the group. And people will be like, what? I'm joining. And I'll be like, yeah, by the way, right now I have ABC. I know there's more parts. I just don't have them yet. I'm waiting on my intuition. I'm waiting on the message to come. And people are like, huh, okay. And then the part will come and say, oh, I received another part and it's here. And so now we're here. Like, I'm very okay, just building things that are not perfect. And that brings a lot of accommodation and forgiving from the people that buy from me, because I'm saying, look, I'm human. Like, I don't have all the answers, but I do have answers. And so come with me, let's build this together, let's test this thing together, and let's see how we can improve it. Like, people are more forgiving if you are open to them. And if you give them the heads up ahead of time. This is my first course. I've never created a course. But if you would like to experience it with me, come. Instead of, I've created courses for 6 figures and now, like, there's no need of that. The other thing I want to share is, a lot of people think that testing your course is putting something on social media and saying, who likes this? No. The most reliable way I have discovered personally is get 2 of your best clients, 3 of them. And every time you want to talk about something you don't know what to build, drag them in a Zoom room and just ask them. Like, I now have clients on my fingertips where I can send them like, yes or no. And they'll just say no. Or I'll be like, are you free for Zoom? I'll send them a link and I'll be like, what do you think of this thing? If I'm writing a piece and it's copy I'm supposed to put somewhere and I don't feel it and I don't know what to change, I just get one of my clients, I send them a Zoom room. I'm like, hey, are you available? Yes or no? What do you think of this thing? I listen, and whatever they tell me, I try and just change to that. I have not received a lot of feedback when I went to a group and started to ask questions. But when I identified someone and sent it to them in their DM, they responded. So sometimes getting customer feedback doesn't mean getting customer feedback from everyone. It can just be from 2 people or 3 people who are like your best clients. Is that, what do you add to that? Like, in terms of, I want to get feedback for the thing I'm creating.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. It doesn't always have to be putting it to social media. When you start getting into some of the nitty-gritty details, you definitely want to ask people that are closer to your business than
people that are paying
random strangers on the internet. Yeah, people that have certain expectations about what they're going to get from you. Yeah. I mean, that's a great place to get feedback too.
The other thing I have discovered is, when you say, I'm trying to create this thing, should I create it? Will you come? People say yes, and those people will never buy it. And so these days, I just create the thing and I say, by the way, whether you come or not, this thing is built and we're moving on. You can stay on the sidelines or you can come. In the past, I used to say, I'm thinking about creating this thing. Would you want it? 200 people would say we would want it. And then I would create the thing and I would say the thing is now available. It's $1,000. And half of those people would disappear. And so for me personally, now I only ask from people who are already spending money with me. That's who I take feedback from. So hope that helps when it comes to, should I do this or should I do that? Are you asking the people who are qualified? Or are you asking your spouse who has nothing to do with anything? Not that your spouse is not helpful, but do they understand what you're trying to create?
Are they paying you?
Are they a client of yours? Do they really understand what you're trying to do? Or are they just loving you? It's like asking advice from your mother. Does she really know what you're trying to create? I'll just leave it there. Is there anything we've left out that would be a bit of an incompletion if we close the interview without talking about it?
I think so. I think we've covered a lot of ground, from folks that are just starting out all the way to folks who have a thing or multiple things.
Yeah. I think for me personally, when you're new and you're starting out, chances are you're going to give people more information than they need, as opposed to how do you get people to do the work. So for the beginner kind of creator, I would imagine, personally, my problem when I was new is I didn't think about the doing. I only thought about what they needed to know, and I tried to give them as much as I could. As I started to grow and work with clients, I realized that less was more. So I really went on, can they do? What is the list I need to give them? As I grew as a creator, I started to feel like I had so much and I didn't know that. And so for me, it was a vault with information that people could just access. But to the people who are coming in, it was like, what? I'm so behind. I need to cancel. And so for me, as I grew, I forgot. In that membership, I just gave people all digital access. It was one of the things I gave. What I didn't understand is I was giving them all overwhelm, and people started canceling. And so as you build and you're this senior person who's developed this ecosystem, chances are you may begin to overwhelm people and call it an ecosystem. Could you help people? And as I have seen more and more experienced people, what I notice is they have mapped out a path. They tell me where to go because they're attracting people at all stages. They're attracting beginners, they're attracting intermediate, they're attracting advanced, and yet they want to serve everyone. And so what they've done is they have created customer paths, customer journeys. And so when you join their world, they have a strong onboarding that threats you in your path and nowhere else. And I think for me, that's where I would end with creation. Could be a course, could be memberships, could be, I don't know.
Programs.
Also, sometimes
people like to call them programs.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just retrieve some stuff. Like I have stuff I've like taken out and it's not available. And now you Google my name and like, has she produced any courses? I have, but I don't know. Sometimes I just get them out and I'm like, okay, I'm retracting this. Because if I'm going to produce, I want to give them this information, but maybe I don't want to give them as much volume as this is. And so what I want to do is condense all this thing and create something that matches how I see the world now. So are there some of those old courses that you could turn a course into one video and now maybe put it in your new work and maybe give the guy access who bought the old thing? I don't know. I've done those things. I've lost money, but it's helped me update my information because I don't know who's watching it. I don't know who's going through it. And I would hate for myself to be wasting people's time in 2024. And so what do? I update, and sometimes people get a free course, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
that is an excellent approach to take because it has to be that way.
I don't know. I think everyone has their way, but for me, I think the less the better. The more stuff you remove from vaults, the better. Just because you're an expert and you've learned it all and you've tried to learn and know it all Not everyone who's coming to you is trying to learn everything. People have one problem and they would appreciate solving that one problem. The problem is if you try to teach everything you know, that is equal to overwhelm. Imagine every time you fell sick, you went to a doctor and they try to teach you everything they know before helping you. How would that work out? That's exactly what we're doing when we try to give people everything we know. It's like you go to see a doctor because you have, I don't know, a problem, and they try to teach you the whole anatomy. Like, who wants to learn anatomy? Nobody. So nobody wants to learn the anatomy of your work.
Yeah.
Catrina,
Exactly.
tell me more about how you help people behind the scenes, what you have going on, and your kind of support system for this kind of work. Because I love this. Like, this is really the way to get people in your soul work, to get people the transformation we all badly want to give people. A course is a very good place that I call intimate because the person is learning from you. It has less dilution and it has the ability to be done in a timeless fashion. So if there was a way to increase rates of how many people complete courses, for me, that would be really a game changer. How do you support people do this work?
Yeah. So the folks that are at the beginning stages, I help you with identifying what the goals are and creating a detailed course map so that no matter how you plan to approach the next steps, you're prepared to do so without spending a whole lot of time, and also making sure that what you're creating is accessible, but also making that process accessible to you. Folks that are on the other end, so maybe you already have a course or multiple courses, I help those folks by doing course audits. So I do a backward look for them, because looking at your own content when you have a lot of things or something that isn't working, that can be overwhelming too. And when your content starts to get overwhelming to yourself, that often means you need extra eyes. And so I do course audits for folks that are on the other end of the process to identify places that can be improved, recommendations, and then accessibility.
How about the tech? My worst nightmare is the tech bit of stuff. Do you do tech as well?
I help with tech. So I'm a firm believer in you choosing the technology that works best for you, or that you're already familiar with, because that experience goes a long way, and you don't want to have to rely on somebody else for the tech. And so some pieces I help identify needs, like what do you actually need for the tech, and how to go about learning that. For folks that already have courses and they're in a platform already, if I'm going to help with the audit, sometimes I'll put things into the course platform, but I prefer to teach you how to fish.
You prefer to teach. Okay. Cool. So is this like a course through a course, or is it through coaching, or how do you do it?
I do all of the just getting started folks. I have two options. It can be one-on-one, where you just get a lot of me support. I do also have a course. It's starting the next one is starting in October, and it's 5 weeks to having a course map. And the way that I run my course is I do have some pre-recorded videos, but there's a lot of opportunity to get feedback. So you might submit your course goals to me, and I will help you with those course goals. I'll help you with the course map. I'll help with breaking down everything and identifying, what you need, where, when, how, and why. And so it's a kind of a mix of like group coaching, except for you do get that one-on-one, but it's in feedback form as opposed to being like in a live session.
I think that the best freedom is the freedom to be able to take what is in your head and put it in an asset, and somehow have a checklist to which you're like very sure that this will help people go through it. I don't know that there is much or better fulfillment like opening the back end and actually looking at those complete rates and going, wow, people are going through the course. Because I have for the longest time believed that courses weren't as effective as coaching, but I think Catrina just challenged us. There's nothing like courses are dead. It's just the bad courses, the information-packed courses, the transformless courses that are dead. I mean, Porterfield has made what, 7 million selling courses. And so courses are being bought and people are going through them. It's maybe what don't I know about courses, or creating courses, or creating a transformation through courses that is holding me back. I really like this whole swing of things. And so really a call to action is either getting this and using it in your course, or maybe you're going to create a new course, or maybe it's for auditing your old course, or maybe you just needed to meet Catrina because you need somebody to go and audit your thousands and thousands of hours. I don't know why you needed to be on this platform, but that's Catrina for you. How can we take your message to the next level with a course that people love to complete? And if you know someone that has courses and courses, or is a creator, and you know that for sure they can use this, all we need you to do is share this in their private space and say, hey, I watched this, and knowing that you have an upcoming course, I thought about you. And just share it with someone whose information you would love to see go through more people. Because the more people go through the course, the more lives get changed. And I don't know that there is any better advert than a transformed life. So let's go build some courses. Catrina, what would be your last words of wisdom?
It's okay to take things one step at a time. I think we forget that. We want to do all the things all the time. But slowing down and taking things one step at a time can help you build something that is accessible and sustainable.
It's okay to edit. It's okay to modify. It's okay to remove things. It's okay to
change is okay.
Retract information from the internet. It's okay to update that thing that people paid you 2 years ago and still give them access to the new one. It's okay to grow. It's okay not to have all the answers at every stage. It's okay to keep growing because it's okay to be human, and you only get to be human. I hope this podcast was interesting for you. I hope you got value out of it. And thank you so much for sharing your time with me and helping with literally being the vessel for this message and sharing it with your friends. Do not forget that whatever platform you are on, you could get you up and contribute to the podcast by way of liking, reviewing, rating, commenting, everything in between that really the podcast allows you to do. One thing I've realized is every time you do those things, it's like you have a whistle and you're blowing it in the world and you're saying, hey, assemble here. There's some cool stuff. So hitting that subscribe button, that follow button, that rate button, that review can be the only thing that needs to be done for this platform to reach whoever it needs to reach. I don't take your contribution lightly. I appreciate you and really thank you for being on this journey with me. And for you, Catrina, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. But more than just being grateful today and celebrating you for today, we really want to celebrate all of the hours you took doing all the things in the wilderness to really make up to this point. So thank you so much for blessing us with your experiences, your story, your wisdom, your tips, and everything.
Thanks so much for having me, Prima.
All right, I'll see you next time.